All right, welcome to Talkin' Investing. I am Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. I want to do the week in review. Last week was the 10th week of a very difficult stretch for the Bitcoin miners in particular. So I want to look at how Bitcoin did. Also, we're going to talk about 5 Bitcoin miners that I believe the market thinks are going out of business sometime within the next 12 months, probably sooner than later. So we'll get to that list later in the video. We got lots of charts coming. So as always, thanks for joining us. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, I'm shooting for 350 likes on this video. You guys have done a great job of getting to our like target, and it has helped the videos a lot. So it is much appreciated. So if you can smash the like button, I would really appreciate it. Okay, let's get to the video. So the first chart, as always, that I want to talk about is the week over week. So this is the week ending Friday, 9/22, and we're going to compare that to the last week. So you're going to see last week's activity was awful. This chart is completely red. The first thing I'll point out is the two numbers that are not in red. As always, you're going to see Bitcoin in gold. Bitcoin's at the top of this chart. It really was flat on the week. It was moved 0%. It was actually up a tiny little bit, but rounding down to 0%. The Bitcoin miners seem to be following the NASDAQ lately, even more so than they are following the price action on Bitcoin. So you're going to see this was the worst week for the NASDAQ since we added it to this list. The NASDAQ was down 4% this week, and that is there in purple. And you're going to see that leaves everything else on here as a Bitcoin miner, and almost every single one of these was down between 8 and 18%. So these were pretty sizable moves to the downside. The worst one was Wolf. You're going to see they are the worst performer on the year to date, in addition to being the worst performer this week. Cypher had a rough week. They're one of the larger by market cap. They were down 15%. You can see several of these were down 15%. Iris Energy is one I watch a lot, down 15%. Riot, which has been either the largest or the second largest by market cap all year this year, they were down 14%. Marathon, which has also flip-flopped with Riot between the largest or the second largest, they were down 12% this week. So you can find your Bitcoin miner, but it's going to be red because everything was down this week. So the next one I want to go to is we are now in week 10 of what has been an incredibly difficult run. We were talking about this a month and a half ago. So we've been looking at this chart every week for quite some time now. It just keeps getting worse. So this is 10 weeks of brutal activity. And you're going to see it's not so much for Bitcoin and the S&P. It's the Bitcoin miners that are really getting destroyed in this period of time. So we'll start at the top of the list. The NASDAQ is now down 6%. And most of that, actually all of that, has been the last 2 weeks. The NASDAQ was pretty much flat for the first 8 weeks in this 10-week period. So in the last 2 weeks, the NASDAQ has taken a little bit of a nosedive. 6% move in 2 weeks is a pretty decent move to the downside. In the entire 10-week period, Bitcoin's actually only down 12%. So Bitcoin, in my opinion, has been fairly sideways. This is a pretty tight range, particularly since prior to this 10 weeks, Bitcoin had a gigantic run up. When you look at year to date, you're going to see Bitcoin is still performing quite well on a year to date basis. Then we get to the Bitcoin miners. BitDeer has been a bit of an outlier. 2 weeks ago, this was at 0 and it was leading all Bitcoin miners. It's still the best performing Bitcoin miner in this 10-week period, but it's starting to give way a little bit, now down 14%. Core Scientific down 23%. Remember, they are in Chapter 11, so this is not currently traded on the NASDAQ. It's traded over the counter. Then we have a giant jump. So what you're going to see is with Bitcoin down 12%, I usually talk about the Bitcoin miners being a 3x leverage play. They are acting more like a 4x or 5x leverage play to the downside over the last 10 weeks. So that's why I say this has been a pretty tough run. The next best Bitcoin miner is CleanSpark, and they are down 43%. Marathon down 52% in this 10-week period. Riot, the exact same thing, down 52% in this 10-week period. So the worst one on this list by far is Mawson. It is now down 74% in this 10-week period. So that's obviously a drastic move to the downside. But TeraWulf has had a very drastic move to the downside. 61% down. DigiHost, stock ticker DGHI, they are a smaller Bitcoin miner. They're down 60%. So I'll let you look at this list, but you can see why, this 10 weeks I have been tracking in specific because this is absolutely brutal activity. A lot of retail investors have given up, have long since given up. Even somewhere around week 4 or 5, I noticed a gigantic drop-off in activity. So I think we're now 5 or 6 weeks into retail investors really, really bailing out. It seems like we still, though, have not reached capitulation because it just keeps getting worse. So while Bitcoin is still within a very tight range, in my opinion, the Bitcoin miners are getting punished. And I think a part of the reason is there is a clock on this Bitcoin miner situation. We do have the halving coming up. It is now only 7 months away. So I think a lot of people are getting very worried with the Bitcoin miners. I do think it may be a little bit of an overreaction because remember, it's only 7 months away, but in cryptocurrency time, 7 months is an incredibly long time. We have seen 1 or 2 month moves where the Bitcoin miners are up 100 or 200 or 300 or even 400%. The market is becoming even more risk off as it pertains to the Bitcoin miners than it was previously. So I will say in the comments section on the channel, a lot of people are talking about, getting out of the Bitcoin miners and maybe making some different plays trying to play Bitcoin. And inside of our membership, we have talked about a lot of different strategies on playing Bitcoin, that are not necessarily the Bitcoin miners. And there are several people that have been adamant they're increasing their exposure to some less risky aspects while still staying involved in Bitcoin. So of all the different ways to play Bitcoin, I do believe that the Bitcoin miners have the highest risk-reward equation. So people are taking a lot of risk off the table. Obviously, simply just owning Bitcoin is the least risky way to play this if you're bullish on Bitcoin in the long term. Just to keep things in perspective, this is Bitcoin year to date. So while the last 10 weeks have been an absolute nightmare, even with those 10 weeks included, you're going to see the vast majority of Bitcoin miners are green. In fact, the majority of them are still up over 100%. Marathon and Riot, which are the two largest by market cap, Marathon's up 154% year to date. Riot's up 173% year to date. This is actually a little bit bigger of a split. Most of the year, these two have been almost identical. So Riot is performing a little bit better right now, just about 20% better, but still very close, and both much more than a double year to date, even after this very punishing period of 10 weeks. So then you get to the ones that are over 200% up. Iris Energy is still over 200% up at 206%. Bit Digital, stock ticker BTBT, is up 247% on the year, and Cypher is up 336% on the year. These are outstanding performances. Now, Core Scientific still leads them all, up 821% on the year. However, this is actually stock ticker CORZQ in the US. It's traded over the counter. CORZ is no longer a ticker. They are in Chapter 11. They have mentioned they will be coming out of Chapter 11, they believe, before the end of the year. So, there's only 3 months left in the year, so that should be shortly if they stay to their plan. But I like to show this chart to keep it in perspective. Still, even with this 10-week period, the Bitcoin miners are still nowhere near their December 2022 lows. On this chart, I want to talk about the 5 Bitcoin miners that I believe the market has given up on, and they are being priced in to go out of business. This is my opinion, and the support of this I'm going to show you. It's essentially the bottom 5 on this list. So first, let's take a look. Which 5 companies am I talking about? So I'm going to go with the obvious ones. First of all, there's 4 companies that are year to date in the red. So whereas you can see most of the Bitcoin miners are still up over 100%, there's 4 companies that are actually down on the year. Mawson's down 52% on the year. It is at or near its all-time low. The market believes Mawson's going out of business probably sometime between now and shortly before or after the halving. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying for these 5 stocks, I think that's where the market is at, and you're going to see it in their performance. So stock ticker NE, which is Sphere 3D, they are now down 31% on the year. They're also very near their all-time lows. Stronghold's in the red, down 12%. Argo Blockchain is in the red, down 4%. So 4 of the 5 companies that I'm talking about are already negative on the year. There's one more. You're going to see GREE here. Stock ticker GREE. This is Greenidge. They're still up 30% on the year, but that is half what Bitcoin is up. I expect that if Bitcoin continues to struggle, this company will be the next one to go into the red. And I think these 5 companies, the market has basically given up on. So, none of this is financial advice. This is for you to decide. If you have a strong conviction that you think one of these 5 companies is going to survive and even thrive, then, this may be something that should go on your watch list. I would be very careful personally. I don't have any of these stocks on my watch list as far as considering purchasing them. I am nervous about these 5 companies, but again, that's my own personal opinion. This is not financial advice, so please be careful and do your own due diligence. All of the Bitcoin miners put together now have a market cap of around $8 billion. So to put it in perspective, Marathon at one point had a market cap of roughly $8 billion, a little bit less than that at its peak. So this entire industry has been knocked down quite a bit. Okay, so this list is almost identical. The only thing that flipped on this list is actually Marathon passed Riot this week. So Marathon was down 12% on the week and Riot was down 14% on the week, and that was just enough for these two to flip-flop. A lot of websites have not updated since Marathon issued 31.7 million shares. So with those additional shares, this is approximately their market cap. I would also caution you, some of these numbers may not be exactly perfect. I've tried to use the most recent financial statements and any subsequent events since then that I've been able to find to calculate these numbers. Otherwise, if I can't find them, I've been using the numbers from Yahoo Finance, so just be careful, but these have been fairly accurate over time. The last chart I'm going to show you just a little bit for fun. I don't put a lot of stock in this chart, but this is a history of Bitcoin, and you're going to see historically September is the worst month of the year. So I did a video somewhere in the first couple of days of September. I believed that September was going to be green this year. So just very quickly, I thought that the potential downside realistically was maybe as much as 2.7% down this month, but I thought we were likely to be green. Now, so far, we are green on the month, but I will say there's a week left in this month, so a lot can happen in a week, so we will see if we end the month green. But I don't think it's going to be a catastrophic month in the month of September. And my line of reasoning is there's a very strong line of support at 25,000, so if they hit that line, it would be basically a 2.5% move to the downside. So I think that's the realistic downside. I still think we're going to be green, but we will see. Bitcoin is funny, and the week's not over. So the good news is next month is actually the best month of the year. For whatever that's worth, I really take this particular chart with a grain of salt. Every year is its own year and anything can affect Bitcoin at any given time. But historically, September is the month that everybody's afraid of. So we're almost done with that. Let's see if we can hold on one more week and maybe end up having a green September and buck the trend, and then move into October, a month where people are typically much more optimistic about Bitcoin. So this is week 10. Maybe we're going to have week 11, and then potentially maybe we can move into a little bit of an uptrend in Bitcoin. We'll see what happens. Obviously, not financial advice. As always, please be careful. Do your own due diligence. If you made it this far, please remember to subscribe to the channel and do us a favor and smash the like button. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.